All right. So, there we go. Rise of the dictators. Shockingly enough, Hitler is one of the main dictators. But first, let's talk about the one that didn't actually cause that much trouble. You have Spain. General Francisco Franco Falan. He's a fascist, so he's part of the fascist party. Fascism is a government control of all aspects of the country. A government control of all aspects of the country. So they're going to control the economy, they're going to control the businesses, they're going to control the education system. In that, it becomes very negative because they control what you think. So schools are built to control you. They're built essentially to make you really, really good factory workers who work for 8 hours a day, who sit in one spot, who do very basic tasks, who ask permission, don't think for yourself. And we're slowly but surely trying to get away from that, but the government does not like that. So we just continue to sit you in straight rows and desks without talking and no group work and raise your hand and don't get up to go to the bathroom and eat at this time and all these things. And it's bad enough to, train you to be factory workers, but it is a whole different ballgame to control and rewrite history. So fascism specifically is known for rewriting history and only teaching what they want to teach in a very biased sense of history. So that's where fascism becomes very negative. In general, it's just an extreme control of everything. So micromanaging the entire country. But in general, Francisco Franco wasn't that bad of a person. He comes to power with a civil war, of course, but that's fine. With German and Italian help. So he gets help from Germany, gets help from Italy. Shockingly, the other fascist nations we're about to talk about. But he does remain neutral during World War II. He doesn't bring his country into World War II. He's very... Yes, I would love a snack card. It's my favorite part of the day. God's way of saying drink more water. No, you don't need 4 cups of coffee today. All right. So, sorry, back from my snack. We have coming to power, Civil War, not so great, but he ends up, I think it's on the next slide, he survived to 89, I believe. He was a very long-lived monarch. The people very much liked him. His idea, we do not believe in government through the voting booth. Spain has no foolish dreams. That is the turning point of this war between capitalism and communism, democracy versus communism. That's pretty big. You can't keep voting. Nobody's winning. This idea of, let the people have a say, let the people do what they want. This is a pushback against that idea of freedom. Freedom, democracy, capitalism. Capitalism is a free ideal because you're saying no restrictions on government, no restrictions on the businesses, no restrictions on the business owners, no restrictions on the workers, no restrictions on the entrepreneurs. Everything should be this idea of free. And with that, it reflects on the government. So when, the Great Depression happens and everything falls apart, suddenly everybody's like, hey, no. You can't have all this freedom. So, why are we even voting? Get one person in there, they're going to fix this mess, and it's going to be great. So, not a monarchy, but essentially close to a dictator. All right, and he ruled till 1975. So, that's a solid reign of, peace through multiple wars that Spain didn't get involved in and still prospered. So, overall, his fascism was mostly successful. I would say he was a minor fascist. He was fairly helpful, and Spain prospered. So that's cool. Italy's going to be a little different. We have Benito Mussolini, or Il Duce, because, everybody needs a cool nickname. And he's going to take over with the Fascist Party, and he's going to be a little more disruptive than Franco was. So he promises to revive their economy and restore the glory of the Roman Empire. Basically, that's his campaign promises. We're going to be awesome like Rome was. And that's a really cool idea. It's a really cool idea. not so great in practice. The Roman Empire was epic, but also fit for its time. It's not fit for that time. So clearly, they did not win in World War II. But he wants to, like, the first thing he's going to go do is get back at the African colonies who basically defied him during, after the 1884 Berlin Conference. Remember, Ethiopia was like, no, we don't want to be a part of you. And they fought back, Prince Menelik, and he won. And Italy didn't get their colony, and they were basically the laughingstock of Europe, because how did you get beat by a bunch of tribesmen with spears? And he was like, yeah, so they immediately goes back to Africa, invades them, gets some of his pride back. Then he starts putting restrictions on his people, changes their education system, changes their voting system, which doesn't exist anymore. Pretty much changes everything. One of my favorite things about him, and favorite's a loose term here, but he was, he built a ton of buildings in Rome, a ton of them, accessing the government, building schools and all these things, which was fine, except for now the Romans hate him because, well, he did horrible things, controlling every bit of their life and entering World War II on the Nazi side. So they really don't like him, and now they hate his buildings too. They're like, oh, ugly Mussolini buildings. And so they just don't even look at them. They'll turn their back to them, which I think is hilarious. But they are ugly. Everything else in Rome was beautiful, and then you would walk up to this red brick, solid square building. And it was not pretty. There's Italy. Let us have a dagger between our teeth, a bomb in our hands, and an infinite scorn in our hearts. So basically, we're better than you. We're ready to fight you. You suck. And we're better. He looks like an arrogant jerk. Look at his face. He was expelled from school. I don't know why this is a thing. I don't think this is a true fact. He was expelled from school twice as a child, but was a teacher before rising to power. I was not expelled, but I got kicked out of a lot of classrooms, so maybe I'll rise to power one day. Be an alderman. An alderwoman. Is that a thing? I don't know. But yeah, so he was already causing trouble back in grade school, but he became a teacher, so beware of your teachers. Germany, the most talked about person in the world as far as history classes go, Adolf Hitler, or Der Führer. And he was part of the Nazi Party, which is the Socialist Party, not communist. He was not a communist. Contrary to popular belief, he was a socialist. He actually blamed communists for fire. He was really good at blaming people. Really good at blaming people. And he uses the Jews as his next scapegoat. And he publishes Mein Kampf, which is my struggle, my story. He was born in Austria, I believe, and then came to Germany. They wanted to be an artist, got denied, which is fine. That he just didn't deal well with it. He joined the Socialist Party, tried to make some change, got in some trouble with them because the government didn't like that. The government was trying to, get on the good side of Britain and France, not start another war. And he was like, this is crap. So he got more involved, wrote his book, blamed the Jews for everything, which is not true. It's really easy to blame outsiders. That's really what it was. I don't think that it had to be the Jews. It could have been anybody. It could have been anybody. Jews just had a long history of being, not loved in Europe. So it just made it easier. So he blamed the Jews. He blamed the Gypsies. Anybody that wasn't true German. Anybody that couldn't trace their roots back to Germania. So it was really just the way to blame other people and to be like, no, it's not our fault. Couldn't be the Germans' fault we lost the war. It's the Jews' fault. Couldn't be the Germans' fault that we're in an economic depression. Has to be the Jews' fault. They have all this money. Look at them being prosperous and not suffering with the rest of us. And, then he, started a war. He does take the Rhineland, the Sudetenland, and Czechoslovakia. We'll talk more about that later this week, of him basically just taking things that aren't his because he's German and they're German and we should have German things together. Nationalism. Look, Germany underneath him. So this was his quote. I don't know if this is my favorite quote by him, but it is one he's known for. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. Like every presidential candidate ever. Just keep saying the same crap. And eventually people are like, yeah, it's happening. It's not happening. There he is, people loved him. It's going to be really shocking as we go through this chapter of like what the people of Germany thought, but they loved him. They thought he was amazing. He was a great speaker. He practiced his speaking. He was wonderful at it, and he encouraged them, and he brought their country back, not in a good way, but he did bring their country back from economic depression. And so when the man gave the men jobs, gave the women back their homes, gave them hope, fed them, like made them prosperous again, they were like crying in the streets for him, like thinking he was their savior. So historically, he's a horrible human being. Like horrible. Like he sentenced millions of people to their deaths and suffering. But in the 1930s, he put Germany back in a prosperous place. Like to the point that he was Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1938. Like he was that cool. And, then he decided to go to war. Soviet Union, we've mentioned Stalin before at the end of the Russian Revolution, but he is the Man of Steel. Not the Superman of Steel, but, the Man of Steel. Mostly for his Iron Curtain later. He is communist. Him and Hitler do not actually get along, even though they're going to work together for a little while. They're not friends because he's communist and Hitler is socialist, and they don't get along. He eliminates all competition after Lenin's death. Like, they just mysteriously disappeared, and sometimes not so mysteriously. Sometimes he just blatantly threw them in prison and let them die. He was Man of Steel because he was hard. Like, he was no joke. Like, in my mind, he's kind of mafia-like. The mafia boss, Don. There we go. That's the word I'm trying to say. He utilizes a 5-year plan to industrialize, which was actually successful. We're going to find out that it was not very successful in China. They got a little overambitious. But for him, he's like, hey, we're going to suffer for 5 years. As a nation, we're all going to suffer. Everybody's going to work hard. Everybody's going to have a little less. Everybody's going to have not what they need. But in 5 years, we're going to have everything. And he did. They built railroads, they built factories, they built new farms. Like, they industrialized in 5 years. And it was awesome. And in 5 years, they were successful, majorly. This is going to be the biggest problem here. He signs a non-aggression pact with Germany and says, we're not going to fight each other, and we're all just going to get more land. Like, you can take the Rhineland and the Sudetenland and Czechoslovakia, and I'm going to take Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. It's going to be great. And we're not going to fight each other during this time. It's going to come back to bite him. But for now, it's fantastic. Ideas are more powerful than guns. We would not let our enemies have guns. Why should we let them have ideas? If that doesn't sound threatening enough, he's basically saying we're going to control what you learn and what you think. Once again, I cannot stress enough that your education is so important. Because when the government tells you what you can learn and how you can learn it and controls the influence of things, like, that controls your opinions and ideas. If you never learn to think for yourself, or if you only think there's two options, like Republican and Democrat, there's only two options. That's not true. That's what we teach you, but that's not true. There's only capitalism and communism. That's not true. But those are the things that consistently, like, it's us versus them. If you can only think what I want you to think, everybody's going to support me. So it's so important to think for yourself and to get your own education and to, like, grow as a human being instead of waiting for somebody else to tell you what to think, or just listening to your TikTok that tells you what to think, or your social media that tells you what to think, or your best friend to tell you what to think, or even your parents to tell you what you think. Go think for yourself. Look it up. Research it. We have the internet. It's amazing. That kills, like John Green, it's the thing on the back of his computer. The internet kills fascism. Can't control what people think when you can just look it up yourself. Just need to get in the habit of that. And that is the end of all our dictators. And we're going to start a war later. It's going to be so awesome. I'm so excited.